Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to another episode of Law with Davida. Today we're going to go over international law, which covers no-fly zone, NATO, economic war, and sanctions. A no-fly zone is a geographical location over which aircraft cannot fly. They are mainly used in war zones to stop an invader from flying military aircrafts over its rival country. It is also known as the NFZ, the AA, or the AEZ, which is the Air Exclusion Zone. The types of aircraft that the NFZ rule applies to are man-made aircrafts, unmanned aircrafts, and drones. Depending on the area's regulation, the purpose for NFZ can be military, security, safety, or privacy reasons. No-fly zones can only be requested by those in high authority or a cohort of countries. If a drone has to break any of these NFZ rules for any purpose, the organization has to apply for a waiver from the FAA. The FAA is the Federal Aviation Administration. Other restricted areas include military bases and national parks. Depending on state laws, other places that have FAA laws can include prisons, hospitals, or other buildings. For example, Washington, D.C. has its own flight rules. No drones may fly within a 15-mile radius of the Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport. And outside of that, only drones weighing less than 55 pounds may fly within a 30-mile radius of the airport. Another example is a no-fly zone policy over Ukraine. That would mean that the NATO forces would engage directly with any Russian planes spotted in the skies and shoot them if necessary. What is NATO or NATO, you ask? NATO is the Northern Atlantic Treaty Organization. It was formed in 1942 by 12 countries. The organization currently has 30 members in it, including the United States. The members of the NATO come to a common agreement to help aid each other in event of attack against anyone else's country. NATO can't intervene in the case of Ukraine currently because Ukraine is not a member of NATO. NATO cannot directly do anything to help Ukraine right now since they are not partners, but some other NATO countries have helped Ukraine by sending them things like weapons for defense against Russia. The most recent news about NATO is that Kamala Harris, the Vice President of the United States, which I do have a video on, went to Poland to defend the organization. Economic war. Economic war is when an economic strategy is utilized by a nation engaged in conflict with another nation. The main goal is to weaken the economy of the opposing nation. The aim of economic war is to control the supply of critical resources for the economy so that the opposing military can use them but their enemy forces cannot. Countries that engage in economic war want to weaken the adversary's economy by not giving them access to necessary physical, financial, and technological needs. For an economic war to be induced, a number of factors must be checked out. The factors that must come into play are the capacity of the opposing country to produce restricted goods internally or to get them from other countries. For an economic war to be induced, a number of factors have to be checked out. The factors that must come into play are the capacity of the opposing country to produce restricted goods internally or to get them from any other countries. Sanctions. Economic sanctions are financial or public penalties against a self-governing state, group, or person. Sanctions are more allowable than bombing and invasions of the opposite country. That is why it is less criticized. Sanctions are when an amount of restrictions are forced upon international trade with the targeted country to persuade their government to change certain things or laws or policies. Certain sanctions can even limit countries' materialistic goods and the amount of money coming in. Sanctions can be with many countries acting together or just one country acting alone. The effectiveness of sanctions are debatable. An example of a famous sanction is Napoleon's Continental system of 1806 to 1814. It was directed at the British trade. There was a famine of things like daily necessities which were imported from outside Europe. But the sanction was unsuccessful because it ended up affecting both sides. Alright everyone, that is it for today's video on international law. I hope you learned something new. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, drop them down below or DM me on my Instagram, which is in my About section, and I'll also link it below this video. Thank you so much for watching. Jesus loves you, and I'll see you soon.